Hello, this is the distributor on the 2.5 Mitsubishi motor that's in the Generation 1 Sebring Convertible from Chrysler. That's from 1996 to 2000. First thing, really this is about taking out the cam sensor if you want to do it that way. You can actually change the cam sensor in these. It's very simple. I would take the distributor out of the car and do this because there's too many little parts. Unless you're a pretty good contortionist, go ahead and go for it in the car, but I wouldn't do it because I think you could drop these screws too easily. One thing I want to point out, here's your cap, right? Now, changing the cap is simple, of course, but you know, again, it's not that simple because you got to take the intake, upper intake off. That's one thing. I guess it's kind of a pain because I can't get this cap off without taking the upper intake off. That's just me. But one thing to watch for, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a spring in here, and there's supposed to be a button on it. And there's no button on this cap, even though it's a brand new cap from a parts store. I'm not going to mention the parts store, but that's how they can come sometimes. They can have no button on it, so they can get lost. They're just loose in a box or whatever, and you'll be wondering what's wrong. I caught that, so that wasn't a problem, but I caught that. But that's something to watch for. So to take this distributor apart, okay, first I got the rotor on extremely loose. You might have to pull on it to really get it off. Rotor comes off. Then you got 4 screws. Okay, 1, 2, and 3, and 4. Okay, take all 4 screws out, and there's also a screw for this little cam that the rotor sits on. The first thing you lift off this plastic. It's already loose. Okay, set it aside. Next, you have this. You unscrew this screw on here. This comes out. It only goes one way. It's like a little indent in there that fits on this. Okay, so it'll fit on there exactly. Then it comes off your this comes off. I don't know what you call this piece, but it's just a metal piece. Okay. Next, then you're going to lift out this whole piece. Now it's probably going to be in there kind of tight. You might have to, you know, loosen it up, tap it around little areas and get it all loose. But before you do that, you got a couple washers, at least on this distributor. You got a thick washer and a thin washer that goes underneath this metal piece. Okay, 2 washers, thin one on the bottom, thick one on the top, at least on this particular brand. And then this whole piece comes out. Let's see if I can get this out of here. I got it in there loose, but it was in there pretty tight. Hold on a second. Okay, it's coming out. Now, between this cam sensor itself, the magnets, and it's almost out, and this piece on the top, there's a metal plate, and that's got to be sandwiched between the two. And I'll show you what that is. Okay, this is out now. Okay, this is actually another piece that's on the top. You're not going to get this whole thing, but this metal plate, this goes in here like that. Okay, that gets sandwiched between that. So when you pull this out, this is actually the cam sensor in here. You see this? That's the actual cam sensor, that magnet. So basically, there's just some clips. You just pull this out. They're just pressed in there. It's almost like just a regular electrical fitting. It's not a big deal. But that's what you could buy, just this cam sensor alone. Okay. Now, another thing, somebody was asking about some of the connections. Well, you got over here, you got this 2-pin connector. I don't know if you can see that. 2-pin connector. Okay. That's this. Okay. Now, here's the manual itself. I don't know if you can read this or not on this video, but you got pin 1. That goes to the auto shutdown relay. Okay, that's the auto shutdown output sensor. Pin 2, it shows it as blank, but I'm assuming that's fed from something else on the distributor itself. Now here is the 6-pin connector. That's the wider one, obviously. You got, here's the, I'm going to post this also online if you can't read this, if this doesn't come out in the video. Pin 1, that's a sensor ground. Pin 2 is an 8-volt supply. Somebody was asking what kind of voltage, where should I test for the voltage. Pin 2 is 8-volt supply. Pin 3 is a camshaft CPS sensor signal. It's a camshaft position sensor signal. Pin 5 is a ground, so you make sure that pin, grounded out to the body someplace. Make sure you got a good ground. That'd be one thing to check for if you're looking for wiring. And pin 6 is the ignition coil number 1 driver. So hopefully this helps, because you can actually change out that cam sensor and it's only like $130. But like I said, I would recommend that you get the whole distributor. And the one brand I thought was the best one especially for the money, $255, was Cardon Select, which is a brand new distributor. Fully tested each one for the right way for exactly the OEM. But if you just got to get a cam sensor, that's $130, and it's not rocket science to take it out, because that's really all that really breaks on this. The body doesn't break. It's not gonna. The bushings probably don't wear out that easy. So anyway, another thing to remember on these distributors, another thing that probably causes them to go, more than likely thing, is on the valve covers. You got those O-rings that are in the where the spark plugs go, and if there's oil pulling in by those spark plugs, you're getting a slight short from that oil, okay? And that makes it a lot harder on these ignition components. So sometimes, people are going through these things like every year. That could be the cause, or it could be one cause, but that could be a common cause. So if you got oil pulling in those O-rings, change those valve cover gaskets and change those valve cover O-rings. I mean, they last a long time, but I mean, if the car's older, these cars now are like more than 10 years old. So, I mean, more than likely, if they've never been changed, they definitely need to be changed now. But it's not that hard to do. Anyway, hopefully this saves you a few bucks, and that's just a couple tips. All right, bye.